another Three Blind Mice Invitational. This time it will be this 1970 Pontiac GTO from Hot Wheels. And as usual, I'm far behind. To do my usual of using a little acetone to unglue the package. Get this out cleanly because, of course, like always, I'll be putting it right back in after I'm done. And I know this can be boring for some people to watch, but it is what it is. It can only take a certain amount of time for that glue to break loose. And I can only speed the film up so much. It's a really nice casting. Like the metallic on it. First, like always, we have to drill out the rivets so we can take this little sucker apart and get to work. Usually doesn't take too long to separate it. This one seems to have quite a bit of metal on that rivet. And of course, after we're done drilling, we have to go back and thread the hole to make sure our screws go in nice and tight. You always want to make sure you do this right, because in the end, when you go to put it back together, it's a real pain in the ass if it doesn't screw in tight. Now, somehow, I wasn't recording when I cut off the wing, but as you can see the jeweler saw on the table, I had just cut the wing off the back of the car. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to have to fix any of the areas that I might have damaged during the removal. So we're going to take my file here and I'm going to start to grind down and shave a little bit off of all the scratching that the saw caused. In the end, you want to kind of get this as smooth as possible, and then we'll go over with a little bit of putty, sand it all down and get it all smoothed out. Now what I'm doing is I'm stealing an interior from a racing champion's car. We're going to take the interior tub that has 2 seats and it has rear wheel tubs with no back seat, and we're also going to use these wheels that came on the car. As far as the engine, we're not going to use that, and we're going to save this GTO interior for another build someday. So let's see if it can all fit together. My guess is it's about the same scale, so there won't be too much difference. As you can see, we'll have to do quite a bit of cutting. Of course, the axle won't fit, but we're going to have to modify the chassis and the interior quite a bit to get it to fit together. As you can see, the tires won't fit as well, so we're going to have to grind out quite a bit of metal in the rear there. Now, after quite a bit of grinding and shaving and cutting and trying to force things to fit, this is kind of the look we're going for. As you can see, it's going to fit in the end, but we'll have to massage it a little more. As far as the chassis and the interior, those two are going together great. And here we have her with the rear trunk filed down, and we've ground out a lot of the interior of the wheel well for the rear tubs. There's only one thing left to do is throw her in the goo. Bye bye, GTO. We'll see you tomorrow. Now that we got her out of the pond, all the paint stripped off, we'll go ahead and clean up the metal a bit. Get her nice and smoothed out. We'll probably do a little sanding on the body as well after this. For now, I just want to clean it up as much as I can and get a good look at what it's going to come out like. The casting seems okay. There's quite a few nicks and scratches here and there, which is odd considering that it was inside a pack, but sometimes that happens before they paint them in the factory. As you can see here, we've applied a little bit of putty to some of the damaged areas and sanded it down quite a bit. We'll probably go over it one more time. Have to drill out the holes for the exhaust. If you know the Crow, you know the exhaust comes out right behind the front tires in the fender. And that came out looking pretty good, so we'll go with that. And now to clean up the holes to make sure there's no jagged edges, we'll just take our file and back and forth, different angles, make sure we can't feel anything. And now we're going to have to remove the factory front turn signals. So I'll just take a little bit of sandpaper drum. And I like to use this because it doesn't remove too much metal too fast. And I'm using my drill now because I blew out my Dremel a little while ago and haven't replaced it yet. Although I find the speed of the drill to be more adequate for this type of work. Sometimes with my Dremel, it'll be spinning at too high an RPM and I'll go a little too deep. So it kind of gives me better control. You got to take off a little bit more. We want these as flush as possible. Right now that we ground them down real good, as you can see, as soon as I focus there, there's still little pockets of where the turn signal is. So we're going to take some of this Tamiya putty, Tamiya, however you want to pronounce that. And I'll take a little bit on a toothpick here, and we'll just go ahead and fill in those pockets. Now you don't have to be perfect when you do this. as you're going to have to sand these down afterwards anyways. But you got to make sure you put enough to at least fill the pocket so it doesn't sink in, and you won't have to redo this many times over. And I like using this Tamiya putty. It's real easy to use, dries pretty quick, and it's easily sandable. I mean, it's not one of those putties where you can still see the grain of it. That looks pretty good. I think we'll let that dry a little bit, then we'll sand it down and see what we have. And while we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to take a little bit of this hollowed styrene tube here, and we're going to cut little pieces off of it so we can make the exhaust that's going to come through those holes in the fender. We'll take a marker here, measure up how much we need. Shouldn't need too much, so we're just going to cut off a little bit there. Really would like to just cut a small piece so we can have these flush on the side of the fenders, because if you ever look at the Crow, it doesn't look like they're sticking out much from the fender. I think that'll work. And I've gone ahead and we've shaved off not only the door handles, because the Crow doesn't have any anymore, we've also taken off the fender trim off of all four wheels. This will give it a smoother look, which also the Crow doesn't have any fender trim on it. I mean, really, most race cars don't. And now it's time to take some styrene and make a wing and a front air dam. Get a strip of styrene to the front here. Came out looking pretty good. Now we just need to fill it in with putty. Now we have the wing all done. Looks exactly like the one on the Crow. Interior is done. And now it's painted in black. Paint is done and looking good. Only thing left to do is add the stripes. So now it's time for assembly. We'll go ahead and get everything ready and set up. I like to use a towel so that we don't scratch the paintwork we just did. I'm going to get some screws. I think on this one we'll be using the 256. Which they're always fun to hold with rubber gloves on. Yep, 256 is the right one. So we'll get those. Make sure we use the big washer. And we'll get our glass put in. Snap our bottom on. And get her put together. One of the last things we have to do is take this thin styrene rod and we'll make our wheelie bars from it. And they came out awesome. An old ripped up t-shirt for the parachute. So here we have the final look at the Crow 1970 Le Mans, turned into a GTO, I guess you can say, from Street Outlaws. It's about as close as I can get to the real thing. And most of this, I'm not going to pick it up and touch it because some of it's still wet. I finished this morning in the last couple hours. Sorry for any footage here that may be shaky. But as you can see, we did the front air dam, deleted the stock factory turn signals in the front, put in the little dots for simulated LED turn signals. Also, we shaved off all the fender trim, and you can see the exhaust hole there in the fender. We used these wheels from a Johnny Lightning car I had. Put the decals on there on the rear tires there, simulate the Hoosier decals. And on the rear we have a parachute made of cloth. It's kind of hard to see there. Has a string going down under its chassis. And we got a scratch made wheelie bars. The wing is also scratch made, as you guys saw in the previous build pictures and video. All in all, I think it looks great. It looks pretty much like Big Chief's Crow. Let's see if we can get a look at the top here. Although white is very hard to show up on film here. Maybe I can back off some of this lighting. Inside, very difficult to see, even though I left the windows open, because I was going to put windows on the side, but chose not to because you can't really see the interior. But inside, we have the roll bar, roll cage, whatever you want to call it. And you can look at the pictures or a previous video to see that. Now the stripes didn't come out like I wanted, but it's close enough for now. This was the second time painting the stripes this morning. I started this build on the 20th because it took me a while to finish the Cadillac. So I worked on this for about 7 days and assembled it partially last night and then the rest of it this morning. And then painted all the details on the exterior this morning. But like I said, it's still, certain things are still wet, like the stripes and stuff, so I'm not going to be picking it up. There's really nothing underneath to see other than, I mean, the chassis is just blacked out. I didn't really want to do much detail to that because the whole point of the car is the outside look. So there you have it, guys. The Crow. If you liked the video, if you liked the work I did, if you liked the outcome, go ahead and give us a thumbs up there. And I'd like to say thank you to all my subscribers. We keep getting more and more. Looking to hit that 300 mark so we can do another giveaway. I'll be doing a giveaway every time we hit a 100 mark. So, for those of you interested, tell your friends, sign up, subscribe. And I'd like to thank the Three Blind Mice for holding this build and giving me something creative to do other than just restore cars or paint cars. So that's it for now, and we'll catch you guys on the next build. I got a gasser that actually looks like a gasser, built like a gasser, coming soon, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching.